going to go recording to the computer.
Okay, lovely.
Okay, so if you've just joined us, just to say that we are recording this session. Hi, Sandrine, welcome. And we are recording this session so that both Marian and I can review it. We might also use it as marketing material for when we run workshops on facilitating for group intelligence. So as we were saying earlier, we were looking to offer you an experience of how we facilitate using both clean language and systemic modeling, which was developed by Dr. Caitlin Walker. And when we talk about facilitating, we're not just talking about facilitating groups. If you are a formally trained facilitator, and let me just see a show of hands, how many of you are trainers or trained facilitators? So we've got a couple, we've got 3, 4 in the room, 5. So we're also talking about when you're in a position where you might facilitate 3 people or a couple of people because the conversation needs that kind of facilitation so that people feel heard. So both Marian and I and several of you in the room are facilitators, and I'm imagining that you facilitate workshops or training. So that's that kind of facilitation. On my part, I often facilitate meetings, and they could be small meetings or large meetings. And recently, I found myself facilitating my mother's doctor's appointments. So it's just 3 of us in the consult, and I'm facilitating to make sure that we understand the doctor. And I'm also facilitating to make sure that my mom is heard and her needs are also heard by the doctor. So we're not looking at just formal facilitation. We're looking at facilitation that could happen in small groups, in informal situations, as well as maybe medium-sized to larger groups where it's more formal. So in a moment, what's going to happen is Marian is going to ask you a question around facilitation. And once she starts asking you that question, she's going to be doing the stuff that we normally do when we are facilitating in this way. And every now and again, what I'll be doing is I'll be pausing Marian and I'll be asking you, what are you noticing Marian is up to? So what is she doing and what isn't she doing? And then I'm going to ask you, what do you think she's up to when she's doing what she's doing? And then we're going to continue, and then I'll pause again and I'll do the same thing, asking you to notice what she's up to, asking you to notice some similarities or differences, for example. And at the end of our 50 minutes together, I'm hoping that we will come up with some principles and best practices for how you might facilitate for group intelligence, no matter the kind of facilitation that you're doing.
Great.
Okay, so I'm handing over to Marian now.
Okay. So the question that I'm going to be asking you is, when facilitation has worked really well for you, that facilitation is like what? When facilitation has worked really well for you, that facilitation is like what? So take a moment to find a time when you've been facilitated, or you facilitated something yourself and that went well, and think about, that was like what? And when you've got something, just, there we are, Hebrew. So for you, that facilitation was like what?
Shall I answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, if I imagine each participant as a book, that facilitation turned on a page that they never turn on or they never go to. It's like opening a page that is completely new for them. It existed, but it's completely new that they haven't read yet or something.
It's like them being a book and opening a page that existed, but they hadn't read yet, so it was new for them. And is there anything else about that page when they opened a page like that?
And reading that page for them, it makes a difference.
What kind of difference?
it's a difference that can be a little bit scary or kind of uncomfortable, but still it's useful. It helps them to come out of a place that they might have been stuck.
So it might be scary, but useful, and out of a place where they were stuck. It's different to that in facilitation for you. Like what? Andrea, what have you got?
When I am facilitating, it's like a light stream.
Like a light stream.
Yeah.
What kind of light stream is that light stream?
It has its curves, but it's not it's not a corner. It's somehow smooth and goes everywhere where it needs to be.
So a light stream that goes everywhere where it needs to be, and it's smooth and not corn. And is there anything else about that light stream when you're facilitating at your best?
It's like flying in that light stream, being in that and going around.
Like flying in the light stream. We've got opening the page of a book that might be scary but useful, and we've got a light stream. And who's got something different? Madeline.
For me, facilitating at my best is like being like a tree, just sitting there, just being there, and the other can touch the tree or can walk around it or can even walk away from it. But the presence is very important. The presence of the tree, just being there.
Presence of the tree, just being there, and the others can touch it, walk around it, walk away from it. And what kind of tree is it, Madeline?
It's a very, very big oak tree. It's very sturdy. It's very there.
Very, very big, sturdy and there. And is there anything else about that oak tree?
It changes with the seasons, and the seasons in facilitating is different than the seasons of summer, winter, etc.
It goes with seasons.
I'm just going to pause you there, Marion. Yeah. And so what are you noticing Marion has been doing with the three people who have shared what good facilitation is like for them?
She asked about 2 follow-up questions.
Okay. And there were two follow-up questions, and there was 2 follow-up questions. Was it of everyone, Madeline, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was equal attention for the people who were invited.
Okay. So 2 follow-up questions, which for Madeline means that it was equal attention. Andrea, what were you noticing?
She's asking who is different.
Okay.
So that not the same pictures pop up, they differ.
Okay. And so when she's asking who's different, the impact is it's not the same pictures that pop up. Okay. And who's noticing something different again? What else have you noticed Marion was up to? Claudia?
She kind of had a smooth cadence to her voice.
Uh-huh. And what was the impact on you when there was that smooth cadence?
It just felt calm and contained.
Calm and contained. And Sandrine, I'm seeing you nod. Was it the same or different for you?
For me, it was almost like being held and giving the space. Like you're very special and I'm really there to listen to you. And it's almost like something comforting.
Okay. And a space, and you're being held, and it's really, you are really special. And let me just check with the group. How many questions did you hear Marion ask just now in that first round? Who heard what were the questions that she was asking? Yep, Sarah?
You want the specific questions?
Yep, just the questions without, not necessarily the content of the questions.
So what kind of?
Mhm.
Is there anything else?
Is there anything else? So there was a what kind of, there was a, is there anything else? And I think Madeline, just now you mentioned, oh no, it was not, it was, let's see, Andrea who said, she asked who's different and then who's different again. Yeah. Okay. And I'm just wanting to welcome people who have just joined us. So Steve, Ozzy, Lucas, anybody else who's just joined us. We are doing an offering around facilitating for group intelligence. And the question that Marion is going to ask the rest of you, we've just done a round of 3. I'm going to hand back to Marion now, and she's going to ask you the same question again, so that those of you who have just joined us will be able to join in the discussion. So Marion, back at you.
Thank you, Jack. So the question I'm asking is, when facilitation has worked really well for you, that facilitation is like what? And that can either be when you've been facilitated really well, or it can be when you are facilitating yourself at your best. So when facilitation has worked really well for you, that facilitation has been like what? Who's got something? Sandrine.
Can I have a go? So for me, it's like having, you know, a big dinner with lots of tables, lots of foods, lots of drinks, and having lots of glasses clinking and people just being joyous with each other.
So being joyous with each other on a table with lots of food and drinks and clinking. And when there's a table like that, where is that table?
For me, it's in a very colorful place with lots of paintings. And, you know, for me, it's, yeah, art really matters. And so there is a lot of stimuli, and it could also be in a, you know, in a field with lots of flowers, you know, wildflowers, and but something where the senses are stimulated as you know, as well as the mind.
Where the senses are stimulated as well as the mind. The table and food and clinking. And who's different again? Who's got something different? Fiona.
When I'm facilitating well, there's a sense of a constellation of interconnection. So I'm not it, I'm with it. So sort of describing a picture of daisies, and there's a line interconnecting across and in, yeah, a sort of constellation connections.
Like a constellation of daisies. And whereabouts is that constellation, Fiona?
It's hovering above the group. Yeah, it's sort of hovering like a layer.
Hovering like a layer above the group. And how far above the group is that layer hovering?
About a meter. Yeah, about a meter. So it's not pushing. There's space between that and the the heads and the constellation. About a meter. Yeah.
About a meter above and space between. And who's different again? Azzy.
For me, it's a guided meditation.
For you, it's a guided meditation. And is there anything else about that guided meditation?
My attention is being guided. So if I'm being facilitated, my attention is being guided gently. And that's the guided bit of it. Yeah. So it's about guiding the attention.
guiding the attention. And when you're guiding, your attention is being guided, where is it being guided to?
To different things, depending on the topic at hand. And I'm almost in a meditative state, which is why it's a guided meditation, because I'm with my stuff and thinking through it, and the attention is then being guided to a particular aspect of it, which then I have to pay attention to.
So it's various things, and you're in a meditative state. And so we've got Fiona, we've spoken with Sandrine, and we've spoken with Azzy. Who can remember what Sandrine's metaphor for facilitation is? Who's got that? No, what was it?
A dinner party.
Yeah, a dinner party. And who can remember any details about that dinner party? What have you got?
It was joyous.
It was joyous, yeah. And
I think there was a lot of art on the walls.
Art on the walls, yeah. Any more?
And Lucas says there was a clinking and it's colorful.
Clinking and colorful. And who can remember Fiona's? What was Fiona's metaphor for facilitating? Well, who's got that?
There was something kind of hovering, a meter high.
Yes,
We talked about the idea of constellation and interconnection and daisies.
Yeah, hovering, constellation and daisies. And what about Azzy's? Who's got Azzy's one?
I think she was a guided meditation.
He was talking about guided meditation. Anything else you remember about hers? Okay, so I think Jack's probably going to come in, but when we come back the next round, I'm going to be getting you to ask these questions. So it's a little bit of repeating and then a question. So we'll move on to that kind of facilitation.
Okay. So what did you notice Marion was doing that made it easy for you to remember other people's stuff?
She asked the where question, and if I can put it in a place, it makes it easier to remember.
Okay, so for Madelon asking the where question, and if Madelon can put it in a place, it becomes easier for her to remember. And who's similar or different from that?
For me, all the questions or all the answers through the questions got to kind of a picture or metaphor, something tangible. And through it being tangible, it's much easier to remember than just abstract words.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of tangible when it's tangible for you, Lucas?
In this case, I can see it and I can almost touch it, like the clinking, the colorful, I can hear the sounds, I have a smell. It's multi-modular.
Okay, and it's multi-modular. And what do you think Marion was doing that made it or that allowed it to be like that for you?
I mean, number one, the question, like what, already invites that, but she picked up on the sensory words people were saying. So rather than abstract words, she was often picking up on the sensory words, asking, where is that? What kind of?
Yeah, so where is that table? Where is that tree? Is there anything else about that clinking? Anything else about that light that's going like this? Yep. So just picking out those words and then asking those questions around it. And who is noticing something else that Marion is up to that made it easy for you to remember other people's stuff?
Well,
Claudia?
She would repeat key words and phrases.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's a similar noticing to Lucas. She's repeating key words and phrases. Yeah. And what words are you noticing that she's repeating? Anybody? So
just keywords, not the full sentences, but keywords that.
Yeah, so not the full sentences, because it would be really, really terribly hard, right, to remember everybody's words, you know, for a group. So she's just remembering the keywords. And because this group has been offering up metaphors, then she's also been repeating back the bits in the metaphors, whether it's a tree or a light or, you know, that space above. Okay. And Marion, back over to you.
Okay. So this time we'll get going. I'll ask the same question to get going, and then I'm going to invite you to do a bit of repeating and asking questions. So when facilitation has worked really well for you, that facilitation is like what? Who's got something different? Who we haven't heard from yet? And this can be when you've been facilitated or when you are facilitating.
Yeah. So for me, facilitation, good facilitation, when it goes well, there is a clear movement forwards. So there's a clarity where it's moving, but there is an openness, and it needs both.
Clear movement forward and an openness. So who has a question for Lucas? And it can be any question, whatever you're curious about. If you are brand new to Clean, just feel free to ask whatever you wish.
And Lucas, what kind of movement is that movement?
It's a purposeful movement. So there is like a clarity on what we're doing or why we're doing it, and it really has for me this forward pushing, almost like a boat in the ocean. Yeah.
Steve.
And Lucas, what kind of boat is boat in the ocean?
So when you ask that, I think it's not so much one boat, but it is a group of boats. But it's a white boat, the one that's at the front. So there has to be one boat that has a direction, but then there is a shared interaction.
Said something, yeah.
And Lucas, when it's moving forward, what's happening then?
That's actually energy being directed, but also being generated through the group having a purpose. We can align energy and generate energy, which we couldn't if we were just going into whatever directions.
So the boats align energy and have a purpose, and there's moving forward and there's openness. And who's got something different? When you're facilitating or being facilitated and it's good and it's working well, it's like what? Sue.
It's like a party.
Ah.
It's like a fun, exciting, engaging, happy party.
It's like a fun, engaging, exciting and happy party. Who's got a question for Sue at that party? Hey, Brew.
Is there anything else about that? So I'm thinking of me, some facilitation work that I've been doing recently, and I suppose, although I really kind of don't want to say it, it feels like I have an important role in that party. So I feel good because of my role in that party.
Got an important role. Who else has a question for Sue at the party and the important role?
Is there anything else about that role, Sue?
I'm feeling transformation. I'm feeling that I'm seeing others. I'm seeing others smile. I'm seeing others connect, and I'm seeing transformation.
She's seeing others smile, connect, and transformation. Let's have one more question for Sue. Who's got something?
What kind of transformation is that transformation?
I think it's self-empowerment. I think it's a I get it moment, and a yes, I can do something with that.
We've got self-empowerment, I get it, and a party and a role. We've got boats moving forward and openness. And who's different again? When you're facilitating well, or when you've been facilitating well, that's facilitated well, that's like what? Let's have one more.
When I'm facilitating well, there is a buzz in the room and a connection between the different people.
Who's got a question for Sue? She's got a buzz and a connection in the room.
What's the buzz like?
The buzz is in waves of people talking with excitement, and then I don't know, talking about something new and then getting excited about that. So it's like a wave of excitement, of conversation.
A wave of excitement and conversation. I have a different question for Sue.
And or anything else about that wave?
And it's that wave that helps me as a facilitator know when to move the group on, or to allow the group more space to explore further, or to experiment. So when it's loud, it's full of energy, and they're propelling themselves. And as it softens or slightly weakens, that's the moment to look for, to see whether it's ready. We're ready to move on.
Okay, so let's just see who can remember things again. So who can remember Lucas's one? What did he have?
Clear movement forward.
Clear movement forward. And
the boat.
And a boat, yes. And then Sue's one. Sue, who went first. Sue Haswell. That's Sue. What did she have? Oh, she had a party. Anything else you remember about the party? What else was there?
Fun and exciting and engaging.
Yeah.
And people feeling empowered.
Yeah, feeling empowered. And she had a particular role, didn't she? And Sue's one, the other Sue. What did she have?
Had a buzz.
Buzz. Yeah. Anything else she had? Connection. Yeah, what stood out for me most was the wave, that she had this wave of high energy and low energy. Okay, so I'm just going to hold Jack a little bit longer, because she's been asking you, what are you noticing about what I'm up to? But what are you noticing about all this facility, all these metaphors? So we've got the light, we've got the tree, we've got the boat, we've got the meditation, we've got the wave, and we've got the two parties, a dinner party, I think, and the art. We've got all sorts. So what are you noticing about these metaphors and ideas about facilitation?
They're all different.
All different. What kinds of differences are you picking up? Or similarities? What are you noticing?
For me, it's about movement, energy.
What are you noticing about movement and energy, Sue?
That it's going forwards, and that for me, it's about bringing people together and them all moving forward together.
So for Sue, it's about moving forward and energy going together. Who's noticing something different?
Me, these metaphors emphasize different elements.
Mm.
So some emphasize more the feeling, some emphasize more the connection, others emphasize more the moving forward towards something. So they emphasize different elements of facilitation.
Yeah, they emphasize different elements. It might be the moving forward, might be the connection, different elements. Who's got something different?
They all create like an ambiance. I don't know how you say that there's like a state of mind. I feel like when you hear them, you get into some type of ambiance.
They all create an ambiance or a state of mind. So what kind of state of mind do they create for you, Hebrew?
It's pulling me into that state of mind, into that ambiance. It's like taking me from here and pulling me.
Taking you and pulling you in. Okay, let's hear one more. What are you noticing? And then I'll let Jack say something. Any more noticings? Or maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay. Yep. Fiona?
They're all hopeful.
All hopeful.
Hmm.
What kind of hopeful?
Hopeful with movement and connection.
Hopeful with movement and connection. So Jack, what were you?
Okay. So what did you notice Marion was doing in that last round to get you to start asking people questions? What was she doing?
Is she looking for patterns?
Okay. Was that a question or Andrea?
I think so.
Okay,
so there are similar patterns.
Okay. So for Andrea, what Marion is up to is she's getting the group to notice similar patterns. What else is Marion asking you to notice? Is there anything else she's asking you to notice? Sue, you just unmuted.
Yeah, I was just thinking, she asked for similarities after I'd said, actually, there were differences.
Yeah.
So perhaps looking for differences as well.
Yeah, yeah. So Marion's asking for difference as well as similarities. And what questions did you hear her ask that, you know, meant to you that she was asking for difference?
What kind of?
What kind of? So she's trying to, yeah, she's asking what kind of? Anything else that anybody else heard? So she's also asking who's different again. Yeah. And what happens for you when you hear who's different and who's different again? What happens for you as you're being facilitated in this way?
I feel invited to share.
So for Claudia, she feels invited to share. And who's similar or different from Claudia? When you hear Marianne ask who's different, so Ibru, what happens for you when you hear who's different and who's different again?
Deepen the question.
Say that again.
I'm called to deepen the question. What's different and what's different again? It just asks me to go deeper.
Okay. And when it deepens the question, then what happens?
Then it slows me down and makes me feel something more essential.
And it slows you down and then it makes you feel something that's more essential. Okay. And who's Sue? Sue Haswell. Go ahead.
When she asks about the difference, I feel it's really interesting because it's for me, it broadens the question. So it makes it wide open and expansive.
Okay. And so when she makes it wide open and expansive and she broadens it, then what happens for you?
My mind feels more open to possibility.
then your mind feels more open to possibilities. And who's got a similar or different experience from Sue Haswell?
For me, it allows to not rush, to really just sit in the moment.
Okay.
And let the flow.
Yeah, so just sitting in the moment and let the flow. And when you're just sitting in the moment and you let the flow, Sandrine, then what happens?
You build the confidence of your thoughts, I guess.
So
of what you have, of what you hold.
Yeah, so for Sandrine, she's building a confidence as she sits in that moment. Okay, so we've got about 12 minutes left of our time together. And we wanted to let you leave with some ideas about like principles and best practices of this method of facilitating that we're doing. So we're using a combination of clean language, and we're also using systemic modeling, which is a clean language process. So Marion, did you take notes just now? I'm just wondering.
I've got all this up on the board here.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so what are some principles you think are really important in terms of facilitating for group intelligence? So let's hear from a few people. What principles do you think are really useful or important for facilitating for group intelligence?
Inviting differences.
Inviting?
Differences.
Yeah, inviting differences. That's right. Okay. Anybody else?
Jack, do you want me to put these up as well?
Yes, please. Thank you. So a principle for facilitating for group intelligence is inviting difference. And we constantly saw Marion do that by asking who's different again, and also asking what kind of is that, anything else about that. What's another principle that you...
Sorry.
Go ahead, Andrea. Yeah, Andrea and then Fiona.
To describe the metaphor more deeply. So we have the same understanding of the metaphor. All the group has the same understanding.
Mm-hmm. So it's about describing the metaphor. And what was Marion doing to get us all to do that, to describe the metaphor?
She asked a question like, is there anything else, or what kind of, or whereabout is? Mm-hmm. So that leads in the end, all those questions let us describe the metaphor to individualize it.
Okay, yeah. So there's an individualizing of everybody's metaphors by asking those developing questions. And what other principles might that be that you noticed was being used in this facilitation? There's inviting for difference. Yep, Fiona?
There's an equal connection, enthusiasm for everybody as they say what they say.
Okay. What are you seeing or hearing that means that there's that equal that you're talking about?
Tone of voice, facial expression, invitation, and equal sort of as a sort of, yeah, there's no sort of sudden, oh yeah, or yes, it just feels equal. It just feels,
yeah,
my words.
Yeah, and it feels equal. And Sue?
There's a principle of involvement and that invitation for participation. So Marion was very good at saying, and who else?
Yeah.
And who else?
Yeah, so there's an invitation of who else and who's different again. So those phrases are invitations. And anybody else? Yep, Claudia?
In this particular session, Marianne had a rhythm, kind of building on what Fiona said. She went to an equal level of depth per person. So the amount of questions she asked per person seemed balanced. So she didn't go super deep with somebody and not talk to someone else. So
yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we do when we are facilitating in this way, and I've heard a few of you talk about it already, you're talking about equal, we're talking about space, is that we're doing 2 questions, 2 or 3, and then we move on to the next person. Then 2 or 3, and we move on to the next person. Then 2 or 3, and we move on to the next person. So, and it's a discipline. It's an art and a discipline, because we are going to make sure that everybody has kind of like equal space or equal opportunity to be heard. Okay, and what else are you noticing might be a best principle? Madelon.
Well, next to first evolving the metaphor and the individualizing it by developing questions, at a certain point at stage, we're looking for similarities, connections. What are you noticing? Anything else you're noticing?
So also looking for similarities and not just difference. Sandrine, did you have your hand up because you wanted to say something? Go ahead, Sandrine, and then Ebru will come to you.
So for me, among the principle is really this accepting the slow pace, that it's because silence, especially in the virtual environment, can feel really uncomfortable, and giving a bit of leeway and really, I mean, having a slow pace to it, I think felt really important.
Yeah, so that slow pace. And when there's that slow pace, what happens for you, Sandrine?
So in a way, it's that, I don't know, it gives me the time to think, and it gives me, I don't know, it's that it tells me that it's not about delivering, not a delivery and not an outcome. It's about the process.
Yeah. Okay. So David Grove, who was the developer of Clean Language, used to talk about, was it David Grove, Marion? Correct me if I'm wrong. Response inviting pauses. Yeah.
It's inviting pauses. And I had an idea that he'd said something about it being a facilitatory language, but when I looked it up, it was Penny and James in their book, Metaphors in Mind, who say that clean language is an honouring, affirming and facilitatory language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else who, yes, Ebru, that's right. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I'll just repeat some that somebody has just said. Like the reaction from Marianne is not like, oh yes, gets excited for somebody and doesn't get excited for somebody. It's like kind of neutral. And I'm realizing it's really important that you get this equal reaction, equal attention. Is it something important or?
It is. So that's really good noticing, Ebru. So in Clean Language and in Clean Facilitation, one of the principles is that we are equal opportunity. What is it, Marion? I can't.
Equal opportunity employer of information.
There you go. Equal opportunity employer of information. So whatever information people are sharing, then we're going to treat it with the same or the equal amount of,
It's all welcome.
Welcome and attention. Yeah. Yeah. Even if internally I'm feeling really excited because whatever the person said resonates with my stuff, I'm going to hold back on that excitement, and I'm just going to treat it with an equal level of attention as I would. It's a little bit like having children, I think, even though I don't have children, let me just say that. It's about treating your kids with equal love and attention instead of like favoring one over the other. Yeah.
And sometimes if we want to draw the group's attention to something, we can come out of Clean a little bit, just make a little aside like that. Oh, that's interesting. So, for Jack, it's like children. It's like having children and giving them equal attention. So we can do different things, not just what we've done this morning.
Because like showing some reaction, excited reaction to somebody, I thought would encourage others to talk. But in fact, no, I'm really having an insight right now. About this equal reaction to what's being said, because I sometimes get excited and show it. I thought it was encouraging, but it might be the other way around, in fact.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got about 3 minutes left in this session together. And in the 3 minutes, what questions do you have for either Marion or me? Azi.
I want to know, so when you're, after you do the two follow-up questions after your opening question, when do you then invite the participants to ask questions of each other?
Okay.
And
so
how do you do that?
So for Azi, when do you start opening it up for for the participants to ask each other questions? Who's got a different question that they would like to ask either Marion or me?
I'm actually just curious about when would you use a process like this? What are the intentions behind this, and when to use something different?
Okay, so when would you use a process like this? That's what Lucas would like to know. Anybody else who's got another question that they are curious about? Ibru.
With how many people maximum you can have such a conversation? If you're 100 people in the room, like.
Okay, that's a great question. What's the maximum? And I'm just noticing the time, so we're just going to take these 3 questions first, and then if we have more time, we'll be happy to answer them. So Azi, it really depends for me, at least. It really depends on what I'm trying to do with the group and what I'm trying to demonstrate. So in this, usually we do round 1 where we kind of just do getting people to start noticing each other's stuff. And then round 2 might be asking for differences and similarities. And then round 3, in this case, Marion decided that she was just going to get the group to start doing it themselves. Yeah, but certainly it's not at round 1 because it will be too soon. Okay, and then the other question for Lucas is, when would you use something like this? Marion, do you want to take that?
We use this in many, many different contexts. So we might use this with kids in a school to explore a theme, or we might use it in a business context to do more of what you were talking about, which is creating joint outcomes and moving forward together. And we use it for conflict resolution. In fact, because it is neutral, you can adjust it and use it for pretty much anything, actually.
Yeah, I use it to moderate meetings. I use it also, like I was saying at the start, to facilitate my mother's conversation with her doctor.
And so how does that work, Jack? And you're not saying to them who's different to.
No, I'm not saying who's different. I'm going, and so can I just check with the doctor, what kind of is that? Anything else? And Mom, what do you need now? What questions do you have now, Mom? And then Mom might say something, and then the doctor says something, and I'm like, okay, and so anything else about that thing that you're asking my mom to do? And I'll pause the doctor and I'll go, and Mom, what's important to you right now about that? So I'm just facilitating to make sure that she has space to speak up. Yeah.
So it's taking the principles rather than that sort of structured format that we've used. Yeah.
We've got one final question from Ibru. So Ibru, when the group is really, really large, it just means that the quality of your attention is not as deep as when we're a group like this. Marion, do you have any thoughts about that, about size?
When we have facilitated large groups, what we tend to do is we do enough of what we've just done with you to give them that idea. So we might do a little round of 3, get them talking about what we're up to, get them asking a few questions in the big group. But as soon as possible, we then put them in breakout rooms where they can facilitate themselves. They don't always do that. They sometimes go off and have just a whole different kind of conversation. And so again, it all depends on how long you've got and what kind of setup you can do beforehand. So quite often when we're doing this work sort of in a company or in a large organization or a charity or something, we have a particular way of setting up, which starts with asking people what they'd like to know before we set the agenda. We get them find out what people would like to know before we begin. So we answer a few questions. We do something called a clean setup, which allows people to get into the idea of asking the clean questions of each other and what they'd like the event to be like you did this morning. And then we kind of introduce the topic, or even before that, we might do another exercise, which gives people the idea, but without going into the content. So we do quite a lot, if we've got the time, to set up the group so that by the time they get to have a go, it's very clear what they're doing. And other times we don't have that amount of time and we just throw them in the deep end and see what happens.
Marion, could you give me the Clean Learning website address? Lucas is asking for places for resources. Yeah.
It's cleanlearning.co.uk. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Yeah. So Lucas, it's where you can go for resources. And unfortunately, we're out of time and we want to make sure that there's space for the next people to come into the room. If you have any other questions, please look us up. We are both on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to continue our conversations with you. And there's loads and loads and loads of resources on the Clean Learning website. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us today. Yep, that's right. Sign up for the newsletter. There's usually a lot of stuff in the newsletter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Keep well, everybody. Bye.
I'm going to turn the recording off, chat.
Yeah, good idea.